Hello to everybody, and thanks for joining us this week. I'm Hunter Williams.
And I'm Amanda Reynolds.
Now, Amanda, we've seen some crazy weather over the past couple of days. We have Joaquin, historic flooding in South Carolina, just a lot going on.
Yeah, I know many parts of South Carolina saw upwards of 24 inches of rain over the past few days.
Those are some crazy figures to think about, but we have a great episode planned out for you guys. We're really looking forward to it.
We sure do. We have a visit from some of our fellow students in the Weather Risk Management Club, as well as a feature about the Skywarn program and your climate outlook, as well as much, much more.
But for now, let's start with Update in the Air.
For many people that live near the Great Lakes, spending time along the lake shores is a common occurrence. However, it's not so pleasant when the recreational areas are not properly maintained. The University of Michigan, however, is coming up with a solution for that. They have mapped out the overlap between recreational use and the environmental stress along the Great Lakes. When they're put together, they create a scientific foundation to help manage the restoration of the Great Lakes. As is shown by this diagram, areas around Lake Erie and Lake Ontario in particular are prone to high recreation and high stress, where areas along Lake Superior have low recreation and low stress. Areas with high recreation and stress are more likely to be poorly maintained due to the combination of more people and poorer environmental conditions. Because the areas along the Great Lake coast brought in a gross domestic product of $15.4 billion in 2010, keeping these areas properly maintained is of the utmost importance.
The forecast for Hurricane Joaquin was a headache that raised many questions, including the question of which computer model is superior, the American Global Forecasting System, abbreviated as the GFS, or the European Center for Medium Range Weather Forecast, commonly referred to as the Euro. As Joaquin began strengthening near the Bahamas, the GFS predicted that the storm would make a landfall on the east coast, while the Euro had the storm remaining out at sea. Now, this is not the first time that the two models have had a high-profile disagreement, as we can look back to Hurricane Sandy, where several days out, the GFS had the storm dissipating over the ocean, while the Euro showed the storm turning into the east coast. And of course, we all know which forecast verified. Hurricane Joaquin, while having a much different outcome, shares a similar sentiment, where the Euro ends up winning out in the end. The question now becomes why, and we find that the answer may be surprisingly simple. To begin, the Europeans collect more weather data, which helps the model to initialize more accurately. The Euro also has access to more computing power, allowing the model to operate at a higher resolution. Eventually, it all boils down to money, as the Europeans have actively invested in their software and computers, while the efforts of the U.S. lag behind.
The United States may not be the only country that needs to make a major change of their emission levels. New research done by Johan Ruetzen at Chalmers University of Technology in Sweden shows that many countries in Europe need to reduce their industrial emissions if they're going to make goals set by the European Union. The European Union set lofty goals of decreasing CO2 emissions by 40% by 2030 and 85% by 2050. Ruetzen said that the clock is ticking, and he stated that implementing new technology into the industrial plants takes a long time. Therefore, to be able to reduce these emissions by 2050, there are only a few chances to put these new technologies to use. Researchers at Chalmers University are trying desperately to find more efficient ways to reduce these emissions, but for now, they are doing their best to implement the ideas that they do have to produce the best result.
The University of Colorado Boulder is beginning a new project that will utilize drones to allow researchers to better understand and observe severe storms. This project goes by the name Severe Storm Targeted Observation and Robotic Monitoring, or STORM for short. During the project, drones will be equipped with airborne sensors, allowing them to collect data which will hopefully further our fundamental understanding of weather phenomena. One important goal of the STORM project is to increase the lead time of tornado warnings. Other key goals of the project include creating better firefighting forecasts, as well as increasing the accuracy of hurricane forecasts.
Many people may remember the extremely cold winter we had in 2013. It turns out that the extreme cold left its mark on the Atlantic Ocean, too. Research done by the National Oceanography Center in England shows that a large blob of cold water was detected to the west of the United Kingdom from the mid-2013 through the end of 2014. Dr. Jeremy Grist, one of the researchers, said that extreme ocean surface cooling of this magnitude is very rare and that it left a major imprint on ocean properties at both the surface and at depths. It's also predicted that this abnormally cold water will begin to surface and start to affect our weather. The exact impact it may have is unclear, but nonetheless, with many more cold winters, this blob may become a permanent fixture in the North Atlantic. We'll be back in a moment with more.
We're now joined by members of the Weather Risk Management Club who have some information on the impacts of the recent flooding in South Carolina. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thanks for having us. It's been quite a week in the world of weather with devastating flooding in South Carolina, leaving the state crippled and scrambling for solutions to all the damage.
What caused this record rainfall across the state of South Carolina?
The pattern was ideal for record-setting rainfall, with many places seeing greater than 20 inches of rain across the state. Three main players contributed to this event: a high-pressure system located over Canada, Hurricane Joaquin positioned near the Bahamas, and an upper-level low over the southeast. The flow of the air around all three systems led to a narrow area of strong convergence near the South Carolina coast. With above-normal water temperatures and moisture abound, it rained hard and often. Furthermore, the slow-moving low and hurricane prolonged the rainfall, making this a multi-day event.
Yeah, Anthony, it has been a nightmare of a situation in South Carolina. While the rain has finally stopped, flooding is still prevalent across the state, forcing school closures and evacuations from homes. President Obama declared a state of emergency for the state, prompting federal assistance to those impacted by the flooding. Forms of assistance included grants for temporary housing and loans for the uninsured across the state. Estimated costs have already exceeded $1 billion, with many homeowners not covered for flood damage.
Could you elaborate a little bit more on the difference between homeowners insurance and flood insurance?
The standard homeowners insurance policy does not cover rising waters in the state of South Carolina. This policy is bought through the Federal National Flood Insurance Program. A normal policy will cover direct physical damage to the insured property up to the replacement cost or the cash value of the damage up to the policy limit. On average, this insurance program costs $700 per year for residents.
Wow, Anthony, it's pretty clear why this storm will be devastating for some. Many people in South Carolina either do not believe they are in flood risk zone or thought they were previously insured with their homeowners policy. In fact, out of the 144,000 households in Charleston, only 24,000 hold flood insurance policies. This low percentage of policy owners in Charleston is representative of the whole state.
What suggestions would you have for those impacted to help prevent something like this in the future?
Well, it's important that homeowners understand that they must purchase their flood insurance separate from their homeowner's policy. This South Carolina case should teach you that the annual premium will be worth it, because you never know when a once-in-1,000-year rainfall event will occur where you live.
As always, we really appreciate the insightful information. Thanks for coming on the show, guys.
Thanks for having us. Next week, 2 other members of the Weather Risk Management Club will be here with more weather risk news.
Welcome back to the show.
Many people across the United States are interested in following the weather, but wonder how to turn that hobby into something more.
That's right, Faith Aritz has more on the Skywarn program and how to be a trained weather spotter.
Are you the only person left outside as a thunderstorm approaches on a muggy afternoon? Do you wake up early on cold winter mornings to measure how much snow fell in your backyard? If either of these describe you, then you are eligible to provide a valuable service to your community. You can become an official Skywarn weather spotter. The National Weather Service is the government's source of all weather information. They have meteorologists working around the clock at over 120 locations. These workers forecast for every location in the United States and issue life-saving warnings and advisories. But they also need people around the country to let them know what's going on in the sky. They need someone who can see the funnel cloud to tell them when it touches the ground. They need wind measurements and flood reports and so much more to be reliably reported to them so that they can send accurate forecasts to the right people. Although the National Weather Service has weather stations nationwide that record atmospheric data, these can only report a limited amount of observations. The best way to see what's happening around the country isn't with machines, it's with you. By taking a short course through your local National Weather Service office, you can qualify to be an official Skywarn spotter. Skywarn spotters are everywhere, and they send in first-hand severe weather reports to help the National Weather Service provide accurate and timely warnings. These reports are often used in the news and are also used as data for case studies of historically severe events. This course can be taken online or in person and covers everything a storm spotter needs to know to feel confident in their reports. The basics of thunderstorm development, fundamentals of storm structure, how to recognize severe weather, and how to stay safe during these events are all topics taught during the short seminar. To learn more or sign up to take the free course and become an official Skywarn spotter, please go to www.nws.noaa.gov/Skywarn. For Up in the Air, I'm Faith Eritz.
The state of California is in desperate need of one large drink of water. For the past 3 years, the Golden State has received below average rainfall and unusually above average temperatures. The reason behind this prolonged dry spell is because of a persistent high atmospheric pressure system known as a ridiculously resilient ridge. What this ridge does is it causes precipitation that would have been meant for California to be diverted up into Alaska and Western Canada. With the stubborn ridge in place, the state has been in a severe drought that has made national headlines. However, in late 2014 to 2015, this ridge had disappeared and California has received much needed rainfall, which begs the question that many people have been wondering. Does this mean that California's worst drought since they have been keeping records nearly 120 years ago nearly at an end? Unfortunately for Californians, the answer is no. According to the U.S. Seasonal Drought Outlook released by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, while the state has seen some improvements over the past few months, the rain they have received hasn't made much of a dent in the drought. To put it in perspective, for California to end its drought, they must receive over 150% of its normal rainfall for the entire year. To make matters worse, California and much of the West are now entering a time of decreasing precipitation for the month of March, and that the drought is predicted to persist or worsen. With agricultural losses and water pumping costs piling up as consequences of the drought, lakes, rivers, and water reservoirs shrinking, and with no end to the drought in sight, the outlook for the state will be as it has been for the past 3 years, dry. For Up in the Air, I'm Daniel Petit.
Thanks for tuning back in.
With all of the wet weather in the Carolinas moving offshore and Joaquin moving out to sea, we've definitely seen calmer weather here in State College over the past couple of days.
We sure have. Casey Laheka is standing by at the climate wall with more on the 8 to 14 day outlook. Casey?
Thank you, Amanda and Hunter. Like they said, I'm Casey Laheka here with a look at your climate outlook. We are expecting temperatures to be above average for this time of year. 64 is your average high, 43 for the average low, and 54 for the mean temperature on October 8th. We are expecting temperatures to be a little bit above those averages, as well as the average of 3 inches of precipitation for October as well. Looking at the drought monitor, portions of western Pennsylvania are still have dry conditions in the area, but the rest of Pennsylvania is looking fairly normal right now. Looking at our temperature outlook, portions of the eastern United States will be experiencing above normal temperatures for this time of year, just a few degrees above the average temperatures. But as we get into the western portions of the United States, their temperatures will be well above normal, many degrees above the average, as is what we're expecting for this time of year. Looking at our precipitation outlook, above normal conditions in the green areas as well. But as we look into these brown conditions, the brown shaded areas below normal precipitation for this time of year, and the rest of the United States will be looking at just average precipitation. That's all I have for you at the climate outlook. Back to you, Amanda and Hunter.
Thanks, Casey.
Well, that does it for this week's show.
Thanks so much for joining us.
As always, a big thank you goes out to all of the Penn State students who contributed to the show and to you, the viewers.
Tune in next week to catch another episode. But for now, I'm Hunter Williams.
And I'm Amanda Reynolds. See you next time, Up in the Air.